Good afternoon, class.
Good afternoon, Mrs. Ray.
Okay, today for our lesson we're going to talk about reading informational text in the context of our next lesson, which is going to be about Abraham Lincoln. And for this lesson, we're going to start with a KWL chart, which should help us kind of organize some of our prior knowledge about the topic, and then think of things that we're curious about or that we don't understand about the topic so that we can answer those and be thinking about those as we're reading. So if everyone can follow along on their own paper, we're going to fill out this chart. It's a 3-column chart, and it's kind of self-explanatory. First column is K, second is W, third is L. And the first letter, K, stands for what we know about the topic. So if you guys could provide me with what your prior knowledge is. Do you know anything about Abraham Lincoln? I assume you've heard a little bit about him before.
He's tall.
He is tall.
And he wore a top hat.
He wore a top hat.
A tall top hat.
And he was our 16th president.
Top hat, 16th president. Okay, thank you guys, I appreciate that.
He's honest.
He is honest. There's that story of him giving back a penny to a shopkeeper, even though he didn't have to.
And he issued the Emancipation Proclamation.
That's true. And the Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves. So Abraham Lincoln was the 16th president, as you guys have said. He led the country through the Civil War. He led the country through the Civil War, and he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which freed the slaves. And we're going to read and learn a little bit more about him. But are there any questions that you guys have first? Because we're going to fill the W column, which is what you want to know about the topic.
How old was that man?
How old is he? Thank you, President.
You are so
Anyone else have any questions, maybe related to the war, slavery?
Why did he feel so strongly that he needed to free the slaves?
That is a really good question. It's one that's hard to answer because it's about his own thoughts, but it's clear that he did feel very strongly about it, and he worked really hard to do something that was difficult politically. Ian, do you have any questions?
How many terms did he serve?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as I said, it was difficult politically to do what he did, so it would be interesting to see if that limits the number of terms he serves. So if you guys have any other questions, you can write them down in the W column on your own, and we'll talk about them at the end and use the answers to those questions to fill the L column, which is what we've learned in this lesson. But first, I'm going to really quickly read the first paragraph of our textbook, and you guys can tell me if there are any unfamiliar words in it. Lincoln thought secession illegal and was willing to use force to defend federal law and the Union. When Confederate batteries fired on Fort Sumter and forced its surrender, he called on the states for 75,000 volunteers. 4 more slave states joined the Confederacy, but 4 remained with the Union. The Civil War had begun. So, are there any words in there that they find unfamiliar?
What secession mean?
Secession is when a state withdraws from the Union, which several states did during the Civil War because they wanted to be able to continue keeping slaves. So you can write that down in the L column, you guys. That's something that we've already learned, even though we haven't read the entire chapter yet. Mom, do you have any questions about secession?
No, but what is Confederacy?
The Confederacy was a group of states that seceded from the Union. They were mostly slave states, they valued states' rights, and their economy was heavily dependent on slavery. And we'll read a little bit more about that later, but thank you, that's a really good question. So we're going to move on and read the chapter, but before we do that, we need to go to our last strategy, which is turning history into a story and kind of translating informational text into narrative text that'll help make it easier to remember and more engaging. And we're going to do that in the form of a chant, which I'll read to you guys, and then we'll all do it together. And it'll hopefully tell us the story that we're about to read about in our textbooks. Brendan, could you help me out with this? A poor pioneer from Illinois named Honest Abe became the 16th president of the United States. He led the Union in the war until peace in '65. Many brave men lost their lives on both sides. The North and the South fought violently. One wanted abolition, the other wanted slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves of our great nation. Lincoln warned the soldiers with the Gettysburg Address. With Reconstruction, the nation tried to recover from the stress. Okay, great, thank you. So, word. Could everyone maybe read through this one more time? We'll all do it together, and Brendan can provide accompaniment, and then hopefully that'll give us a preview of what we're about to do. 1, 2, 3. A poor pioneer from Illinois named John Slade became the 16th president of the United States. He led the Union into the war until peace in 65. Many brave men lost their lives on both sides. The North and the South fought violently. One wanted abolition, the other wanted slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation freed the slaves of our great nation. Lincoln mourned like soldiers with the Gettysburg Address. The Reconstruction of the nation tried to recover from distress. Great, thank you guys. Now we're going to take turns reading the chapter out loud.
Thank you, Ms. Rad.
You're welcome.